The first time Obi laid eyes on Janet, he knew she was the one. It wasn't her beauty that caught his heart, though she was certainly beautiful. It was the kindness in her voice when she greeted him at her aunt's shop in Enugu, the way she listened more than she spoke, and how she looked into his eyes as if she already knew him. 6 months later, they were married. Obi was the only son of Mama Adaize, a widow known throughout the village of Okboko for her sharp tongue and iron will. She raised Obi alone after losing her husband in a tragic car accident when Obi was just 10. She sacrificed everything for her son, and in her eyes, no woman on earth was good enough for him, least of all, Janet. From the day Janet entered the family compound, with her modest luggage and shy smile, Mama Adaize's disapproval was loud and poisonous. She didn't need to shout. Her eyes said it all. The sneers, the deliberate silence at mealtime, the way she always greeted Obi, but ignored Janet like a shadow. And Obi noticed, but he was in love, and love made him believe things would eventually settle. They never did. The first major misunderstanding happened just 2 weeks into the marriage. Janet had prepared Ofe Onugbu with pounded yam for dinner, a recipe she'd learnt from her late mother. Mama Adas tasted it, spat it into her palm, and said, "So this is the tasteless food you want to use and poison my son? You can't cook, you can't clean, and I'm supposed to call you wife?" Janet held her tears until midnight, when Obi pulled her into his chest and whispered, "Just give her time. She'll come around." But time only sharpened Mama Adaize's bitterness. And then, the miscarriages began. The first one came quietly, just 2 months into Janet's first pregnancy. The second was more painful. By the third, the whole village began whispering. By the sixth, the whispers had become thunder. Janet must have eaten something, the neighbors said. Maybe she did an abortion in the past, some gossiped. She probably tied her womb before marriage. Obi never blamed her. He followed her to every hospital, every herbalist, every prayer house. He held her hand during scans, wiped her tears after tests, and massaged her back during sleepless nights. But Mama Adaize, she was another story. "Obi, open your eyes," she screamed one night, slapping her own chest in frustration. "This woman is not a wife. A wife brings children. This one is a man in a woman's wrapper." Obi stood up from the chair that night, fists clenched. "Mama, if you ever talk about my wife like that again, I will leave this house." But even his threat didn't stop her. If anything, it added fuel to her fire. From then on, Mama Adaize made it her mission to break Janet. She poisoned moments with bitter words. She'd interrupt morning prayers to talk about neighbors' daughters who had twins just a year into marriage. She'd place wrappers meant for omugwo, postnatal care, on her bed and say, "Maybe I'll use this in my next life, since your wife is only fit to birth pain." The pain for Janet wasn't just physical. It was spiritual, emotional, soul-crushing. Each month her period returned, it felt like a funeral. Each time she heard the cry of a neighbor's baby, something inside her cracked. Yet somehow, she stayed. She cooked. She cleaned. She smiled through the insults. She served Mama Adai's food, even when her hands trembled. And at night, when Obi prayed with her, she wept silently, begging God to give her a child. Just one. Still, the silence in her womb remained, until something strange happened. It was a cold Harmattan morning, when Janet awoke suddenly. Her breath caught in her throat. Her body felt different. She couldn't explain it, but a strange peace settled over her chest. She went to the bathroom to wash her face, and then she noticed her period was late. 1 day, then 2, then 3. By the 7th day, she bought a test. 2 lines. She stared at it for hours, her heart racing. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't scream. Could this be real? Or another cruel joke? It had been 4 years. 4 years of dashed hopes, 6 miscarriages, dozens of medical reports, sleepless nights, fasting, anointing oil, and bitter herbs. Now, suddenly, life had returned to her womb. When Obi came home from work that evening, she stood at the door, shaking. He saw her face, pale with disbelief, and rushed forward. "What's wrong? Are you hurt?" She held up the test with trembling fingers. I think I'm pregnant." He took it. He looked, then looked again. His lips parted, and then he broke. Tears rolled down his face as he lifted her off the ground and twirled her. "Jesus, thank you. Thank you. This is our miracle." But outside, standing by the window, hidden behind the curtain, Mama Adeze watched with narrow eyes. Her hands gripped her wrapper tightly, and in a voice only the shadows heard, she muttered, "Let's see what comes out of this pregnancy." That evening, the celebration began. Obi bought fried chicken and malt. He played high-life music in the parlor. They danced together like they hadn't in years. Her hands in his, her belly between them, barely showing, but already everything. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her palms. The joy in his eyes made Janet feel whole again, but their laughter was too loud. Mama Adeze stood at her bedroom door, arms folded, her wrapper tied tighter than usual. Her face was unreadable. She didn't speak a word throughout the celebration, not even congratulations. When Obi brought her a plate of food and said excitedly, "Mama, God has done it. Janet is pregnant," she simply looked at him. Her response was cold and sharp. "So, after 6 miscarriages, you expect me to dance because she's carrying number 7? Obi's smile faded. "Mama, why are you like this? This is good news." "Obi, I've told you before. A woman whose womb rejects children is not a woman. Don't be deceived by small joy. Let's wait until the 9th month before you buy cotton prom." And she turned and shut her door. Janet heard every word from the kitchen. Her hands trembled as she stirred the soup. A bitter taste rose in her throat, not from the spices, but from pain. It didn't matter what she did, what blessing she carried. Mama Adeze would never accept her. In the weeks that followed, the tension grew like fire under dry grass. At church, Obi gave a testimony. The congregation clapped. Janet beamed. At home, Mama Adeze burnt incense in clay pots and whispered under her breath at night. She claimed it was night prayers, but Janet was no fool. Every morning brought new irritations. Mama Adeze would complain about the way Janet walked, how slowly she cleaned, how she needed special food, as if the entire household now revolved around her belly. "Is it twins you're carrying or the Messiah?" she muttered one morning as Janet sat to rest. But Obi noticed the fatigue on his wife's face, the dark circles under her eyes, the way her smile was becoming less frequent. He sat with her one evening on the veranda and took her hand. "I'm thinking of renting a small apartment in town for the rest of your pregnancy. Just us. Peace and quiet." Janet shook her head. "Number, I won't let her drive me away. I'm your wife. This is my home too." Obi respected her decision, but he tightened his protection around her. He bought her supplements, took over house chores when Mama refused to help, and sometimes even slept on the parlor couch when the tension between the two women became too thick to breathe through. But Janet couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Her dreams began to shift. She would see herself walking in a forest, chased by shadowy figures. Sometimes she heard babies crying, then turning into animals. She started waking up with marks on her arms and thighs, as if scratched. Obi dismissed them as nightmares caused by pregnancy stress. But deep inside, Janet felt watched, And then came the whispers. One evening, as she stepped outside to fetch water, she overheard Mama Adaeze speaking to a neighbor. "My son is too blind with love. This pregnancy won't end well. Watch and see." That night, Janet cried harder than she had in years. Her only crime was wanting to be a mother. But despite it all, she carried on. She marked her calendar with trembling fingers each month. She watched her belly grow. She bought small clothes, yellow, blue, white, never pink or purple, because she didn't want to assume. She began speaking to the baby inside her. "You are my miracle. No evil will touch you. I will hold you in my arms. I will sing to you. I will cover you with my whole life." But in the shadows of the house, beneath every joy, something unseen stirred, something waiting. The months passed like whispers, each one holding its breath, waiting to see if this pregnancy would survive the curse that seemed to shadow Janet's womb. But this one was different. The bleeding didn't come. The cramps never appeared. The baby, from the second trimester onward, moved with the strength of something determined to live. Each kick felt like hope tapping against Janet's ribs, reminding her that maybe, just maybe, this time would be the one. Obi transformed into a different man. He was no longer just a husband. He was a protector, a planner, a father in waiting. He painted the baby's room sky blue with golden stars, saying, "Even if it's a girl, she'll shine like the sun." Every weekend, he drove Janet to antenatal appointments. He attended the sessions, asked questions, took notes, and made sure his wife never walked alone. Her baby bump became his pride. He would talk to it at night, placing his cheek on her stomach and whispering, "Daddy loves you. Come safely, my sunshine." But even as the home overflowed with joy, Mama Adaeze's presence was like a stone in the middle of a peaceful stream, blocking, disrupting, turning joy into tension. She never asked how Janet was feeling. She never touched Janet's stomach. She never once said the word baby. Instead, she watched, always watching. Janet noticed how Mama Adaeze had begun locking her room, something she'd never done before. She noticed the midnight activities, muffled chants, flickering candlelight under the door, and that strange bitter smell, like burnt leaves mixed with camphor. One night, Janet got up to use the bathroom and heard the clinking of bottles outside. She peeped through the kitchen window and saw Mama Adaeze behind the mango tree, pouring something red from a small clay pot into the soil. Janet's heart raced. She ducked before she was seen. The next morning, that same tree stood wilted. The mangoes had blackened overnight. Something wasn't right. That was also the month the dreams returned. Only now, they were more vivid, more terrifying. In one dream, Janet stood in a room filled with baby cots, but each cot contained a goat. The dove's name. In another, she was lying on a hospital bed. The doctor came in smiling, but when he pulled her blanket, he laughed darkly. "There is no child," he said, "only Shane." Each time she woke up, sweating and gasping, Obi was there, wiping her forehead and holding her until she calmed down. "It's the stress," he would say gently. "You need rest. Let's go to my aunt's house in Alka for a while." But Janet refused. She couldn't explain why, but something inside her told her she had to stay. Leaving now would be like surrendering something sacred. Even the hospital staff noticed how peculiar the pregnancy was. At 6 months, the scans became strange. The doctor frowned often but said nothing. At one visit he asked, "Madam, are you feeling okay? No sharp pains? No strange movement?" Janet nodded slowly. "Just strange dreams." He paused. "Everything looks fine, but we'll keep monitoring closely." Obi insisted on booking a private room. ahead of delivery, complete with new sheets, a baby cot, and decorations. "I want our child to enter the world with joy," he said. Back at home, Mama Adaize scoffed. "So you people are already buying clothes, painting rooms, and dancing around like the child is already in your hands," she said one evening, sipping her pap slowly. "Don't count your yams before harvest. This house is not yet blessed." Janet's patience snapped. Her voice rose like thunder. "Mama, whether you like it or not, I will carry this baby to term, and you will not stop it. I don't know what you're doing with your herbs and your late night chants, but the God I serve will not allow me to be disgraced." The room fell silent. Obi stood in the corridor, frozen. Mama Adaize slowly turned to Janet and smiled, but it was the kind of smile that carried warning beneath it. "I don't need to lift a finger," she said calmly. "Your own shadow will destroy you." After that night, Janet started locking her own door. She started praying more, fasting despite her condition. She anointed the baby room, poured oil on her belly, and began sleeping with her Bible under her pillow. Still, the tension didn't ease. In the final week of the 8th month, a pigeon crashed into their compound window and died. Its neck was twisted unnaturally. Janet screamed. Mama Adaize buried it herself and said nothing. Obi tried to hold the family together, but he was unraveling. He began to see things too. Shadows passing corners, doors creaking open without wind, voices whispering from empty rooms. He told himself it was fatigue, but deep inside, he feared something bigger than them was at work, and the due date was drawing near. The 9th month began with rain, not the soft, healing kind, but heavy, angry torrents that poured for 3 days straight, soaking the red earth and flooding the paths around the compound. Thunder cracked, like the sky itself was groaning. Even the goats in the backyard bleated nervously. Inside the house, the air was tight with silence. Janet moved slower now, her feet swollen, her back aching, her belly round like a full moon. Each breath was a prayer. Each step felt like walking through water. But she held her head high. She had made it. 9 full months. No miscarriage. No bleeding. No early cramps. And yet, no peace. Her dreams had grown more vivid. In one, she stood in front of a mirror and saw herself pregnant, glowing, only for the reflection to morph into something hideous. Her belly opened like a fruit, and a goat stepped out, bloodied and crying. When she screamed, the mirror shattered, and a woman's laughter echoed all around her. In every dream, there was laughter. And in every dream, it sounded like Mama Adaize. Janet stopped telling Obi about them. He was already on edge, pacing at night, praying under his breath, reading psalms aloud before bed. He had begun to sleep with his Bible open on his chest. Then came the day the village prophetess came knocking. She was not invited. She simply appeared, barefoot, with chalk on her forehead and a wrapper tied over one shoulder. Her name was Mama Nkamjika, known across 3 towns for her visions. Obi opened the door. "Where is your wife?" she asked. "In the bedroom. She's resting," he said. The prophetess didn't smile. She looked over his shoulder, straight into the house. Something dark is sitting on her belly, and it is not a child. Janet heard it from inside and froze. She wanted to run, to shout, to deny it, but part of her knew. She had known for months. The prophetess stayed only a few minutes. She left them with one sentence: "Prepare yourselves. The day of revelation is near. What is hidden will not stay hidden." After she left, Mama Adaize came out of her room, laughing. "These your roadside prophets. If she knows the future, why is she barefoot?" Janet ignored her. She had learned that silence was more powerful than words. But that night, the silence was broken. A crash came from the backyard. Obi ran out and saw a clay pot shattered on the ground, one that hadn't been there before. It was filled with feathers, hair, and something red that smelled like dried blood. He scooped a bit with a stick and recoiled. He called Janet out. They stared at it, confused, afraid, certain it had not been there that morning. Janet turned slowly and looked up at her mother-in-law's window. The curtain moved, and for the first time in her life, Janet whispered the words out loud. My mother-in-law is not just wicked. She's a witch. The next day, Janet began bleeding lightly. She rushed to the hospital with Obi, heart pounding, but the doctor said it was normal. The baby was preparing for birth. They were told to go home and rest. They didn't rest. That night, Janet couldn't sleep. She sat upright on the bed, holding her belly with both hands. She could feel something moving, but not like a baby. It felt like crawling, like something pacing, turning, something watching her from inside. At midnight, she heard chanting again, from Mama Adesia's room. Soft at first, then louder, rhythmic, almost melodic. Janet stood, barefoot, and crept to the door. She leaned in. The chanting paused. Then a whisper. She must not deliver what she carries. Not in this house, not in this world. Janet stumbled back, breath ragged. Obi found her sitting on the floor, weeping silently, arms wrapped around her stomach. Take me to your uncle's house, she whispered. Anywhere. We have to leave. But they had no time. The next morning, her water broke. Right there in the kitchen as she bent to lift a bucket of water. Mama Adaze stood across the room and smiled. Ah, finally. Obi rushed her to the hospital. The clouds rolled in. The rain returned. Thunder cracked as they sped down the muddy road. Janet gripped her belly and moaned through the pain. But through the pain, she also heard laughter. And this time, it wasn't in her dream. It was coming from deep within. The road to the hospital was soaked in chaos. Rain slapped the windshield like waves. Thunder growled overhead, and the car's headlights barely cut through the dense, early morning gloom. Obi gripped the steering wheel with one hand, while the other reached toward Janet, who was groaning in the passenger seat, her head against the window. Hold on, my love, he said over and over, like a chant. Just hold on, we're almost there. Janet couldn't speak. The pain was slicing through her lower back in waves, each one stronger than the last. Her fingers dug into the seatbelt, her knuckles pale. Her body was drenched in sweat, and yet she felt ice cold. Inside her womb, something stirred again. It wasn't like a baby's kick. It was heavier, slower, too strong, too deliberate. Something was wrong. They reached the hospital just after 5 a.m. The emergency staff rushed her in, placing her on a stretcher. The bright white lights of the hallway blinded her for a moment. Nurses shouted codes and instructions. A doctor, a young man with kind eyes, held her hand. You're fully dilated. Let's get you into delivery now. Obi was left outside the labor room. His shirt was soaked from rain and sweat. He dropped to his knees and began to pray, his forehead pressed to the cold tile floor. Please God, don't let me lose her. Not after we've come this far. Inside the delivery room, Janet's body was on fire. She pushed, screamed, pushed again. The midwife encouraged her, sweat dripping from her brow. One more push, madam. We can see the head. But the doctor's eyes narrowed. His voice changed. That's not a head. The room went still. Janet's heart nearly stopped. What? What do you mean? The midwife leaned closer, squinting, then recoiled. What is that? A shape emerged. Dark, wet, with fur and hooves. Gasps filled the room. The midwife backed away. The doctor's gloves trembled. Get the pediatrician. Now, with one final push, it was out. The room froze. On the delivery table, crying and wriggling, was a goat. A baby goat, covered in amniotic fluid. Its eyes were open. Its body was fully formed, and it let out a sound that echoed like a baby's first cry. Only wrong. Deep. Hollow. Janet screamed. Not in pain, but in terror. She sat up despite her exhaustion, staring at the creature between her legs. "Where is my baby?" she shrieked. "What is that? What is that?" The midwife dropped her scissors. Nurses backed away, like they had seen death itself. The doctor turned pale. I don't know. This is impossible." Janet thrashed on the bed, crying uncontrollably. That's not mine. That's not mine. I carried a child. A child, not an animal." Back in the waiting area, Obi's phone rang. It was the nurse. Her voice trembled. "Sir, your wife has delivered. You need to come now." He jumped to his feet. "Is it a boy? A girl?" No answer. He burst into the delivery ward, still smiling, filled with joy. "I'm a father." Then he saw them, the pale faces, the silence, and on the table, the small, blood-slicked body of a goat wrapped in white cloth. Obi staggered back like he had been struck. His mouth opened. No sound came. Janet was screaming and pointing. "She did this. Your mother did this. I told you. She's a witch. She's the one. She's the one." Obi turned to her, still frozen. What are you saying?" "She turned my child into a goat. That thing. That's not mine. She's behind this. She never wanted me to have a child." A nurse quietly carried the goat away for examination. The doctors whispered amongst themselves, unsure whether to call a pastor or a psychiatrist. Obi sat down slowly, numb. The news spread like wildfire. By evening, the story was all over the neighborhood, and by the next morning, on social media. Woman gives birth to goat in Enugu hospital. Some said it was a medical condition. Others said it was juju. Some said Janet had long been suspected of witchcraft, and her sins had now exposed her. But when Mama Adais arrived at the hospital and saw the scene, she clapped her hands dramatically and burst into mocking laughter. "Shame. Shame has finally covered you, Janet. You've been hiding behind church and makeup. Look at the demon you gave birth to. A goat. You are a witch. You're the witch," Janet roared back. "You did this to me." The hospital security had to separate them. That night, Obi sat alone in the hallway, holding his head. His world was crumbling. His wife had given birth to a goat. His mother was calling her a witch. His wife was calling his mother a witch. And deep inside, he feared the worst. What if they were both telling the truth? By dawn, the hospital was swarming with whispers. Nurses moved like ghosts. Patients peeked from behind curtains. And from the far end of the corridor to the compound gates, one name was on everyone's lips. Janet, the woman who gave birth to a goat. Outside the hospital, a small crowd had gathered. Market women, Okada riders, mechanics on break. Some came to gawk, others to pray. Some brought Bible verses. Others brought ridicule. The chief medical director held an emergency meeting. "We must handle this delicately. There's no medical explanation, but we need to contain the rumors." Yet, the truth, or at least the fear of it, was already out. Inside the private ward, Janet sat on the hospital bed, a dull look in her eyes. She hadn't spoken since morning. She didn't touch her food. She just stared at her empty hands, the ones that were supposed to be cradling her newborn child. Obi stood near the window, staring out at the grey clouds. His shoulders sagged. His eyes were red. His mind felt like a battlefield. Logic, faith, tradition, shame and rage waging war. Janet finally spoke, her voice hollow. You believe me, don't you? He didn't turn. I carried a child, Obi. I felt it. I dreamed about her. I sang to her. She kicked every night. I did everything. And then, that woman turned her into that thing. Obi turned slowly. You're sure it was Mama? I have never been more sure of anything in my life. Obi walked toward her. He knelt. Then swear before God that you are not hiding anything. That you never went anywhere. Never used anything. Never. I swear, she cut in. Everything I did in God's name. I fasted. I prayed. I slept on the altar. I never sought power from anywhere else. But your mother hates me. Just then, the door opened, and Mama Daisy stepped in. She wore a white lace wrapper with gold embroidery and held a Bible tightly to her chest. Her expression was blank, but her eyes gleamed with fury. So, still pointing fingers, eh? Instead of thanking God you're alive after delivering a demon? Obi stood in between them immediately. Mama, please, not now. Janet rose. Not now? She destroyed my baby and you say not now? Mama Daisy hissed. You think it's me? If anyone is a witch here, it's you. A woman whose womb vomits death 6 times and then births a goat. Is that one normal? I carried your grandchild. Janet screamed, her eyes filled with tears. But you replace her. You replace her with a curse. Security had to be called again. They were separated, but the damage was done. The nurses whispered louder now. Janet, the cursed woman. Mama, Adeze, the jealous witch. Obi, the man caught between 2 forces. Later that evening, Obi sat outside, alone on a bench. The rain had started again, falling steadily on the tin roofing. He rubbed his forehead and whispered, God, where are you in all this? He had barely finished the sentence when he heard footsteps. A man approached. He was tall, with a calm, commanding presence. He wore a simple white shirt, black trousers, and no shoes. His beard was full, and his eyes were sharp but gentle. Are you Obi? The man asked. Obi nodded slowly. Yes. Who are you? I'm Pastor Elijah. Someone sent for me. Janet's aunt had called him from another state after hearing the news online. Obi stood quickly. Please, Pastor. I don't even know what to believe anymore. My wife is saying my mother is a witch. My mother is saying my wife is the one. And that thing that came out of my wife, I don't know what it was. The pastor placed a hand on Obi's shoulder. I will go in, alone, with your permission. Obi hesitated. Please, just find out what's going on. The pastor entered the ward quietly. Janet looked up from the bed. He said nothing at first. He simply walked around the room, eyes closed, whispering under his breath. After a few minutes, he opened his eyes. Then he spoke with deep certainty. There is a covenant in this house. Janet sat up. What kind of covenant? Something was exchanged. A destiny was stolen, and a child has been hidden. Janet burst into tears. So I'm not mad. I'm not cursed. The pastor nodded slowly. But there is a witch close to you. Someone who swore that you will never taste joy. Someone who carries the spirit of jealousy and death. Obi entered the room just then. Who is it? He asked. Tell us the truth. Who is the witch? The pastor closed his eyes again. Then, in a low voice, he said, The Lord says, in 7 days, the truth will be revealed. The witch will die, and the goat shall transform into a child. The room fell completely silent. Janet gasped. Obi's knees gave way. The nurse watching from the doorway crossed herself and fled. By nightfall, word had spread again. The house of Obi had been marked. A goat would become a baby. A witch would die in 7 days. And somewhere in the shadows, Someone's time was running out, and the question hung heavy in the air. Now the question is this: who is the witch? Could it be Janet? Could it be Obi's mother? Could it be Obi? Will the goat transform to human?